Okay, let's dive right into this explainer by completely shattering a popular myth. You know, when we picture ancient humans, it's so easy to just default to that grunting cave monster stereotype we've all seen a million times in pop culture. But recently, forensic artists have actually been reconstructing the faces of numerous ancient humans, using nothing but genuine skull structure and tissue depth data. And the results? Well, they tend to genuinely surprise people. Because often, these reconstructions look exactly like someone you'd pass on the street today without a second glance. It completely challenges everything we think we know and brings us to a rather fascinating topic.
So, to properly answer that loaded question, we actually have to split it into two. We really need to separate the shifting temporary cultural beauty standards of today from the deeply rooted, totally consistent biological pressures that have driven human attraction across time. I mean, are we just projecting our modern beauty standards backward, or is there a true universal baseline of attractiveness? Let's start with Section 1, the hardware, the biology of beauty. This is the foundational evolutionary science that makes up this core hardware of human attraction. Notice how specific traits, like facial symmetry, clear, even skin texture, and certain proportional relationships, well, they aren't just arbitrary cultural trends. They actually function as honest, hard-to-fake biological signals. Our brains evolved to find these exact traits appealing, because in the ancient world, they proved that a potential partner had highly stable development. Basically, it meant they successfully survived childhood without major illnesses, nutritional deficiencies, or severe parasitic infections. You definitely weren't consciously doing the math. Your brain was just biologically wired to prefer mates with better survival odds. And get this hardware has been installed for a very, very long time. Roughly 200,000 years ago, anatomically modern Homo sapiens emerged. And right from that point, our ancestors had already established the gracile, relatively delicate bone structure we associate with modern human faces today. Our biological evaluation system for attractiveness was essentially installed back then, and honestly, it really hasn't had a major software update since. Which brings us to Section 2. The face and the species, rethinking Neanderthals. Let's see how all this builds when we introduce another human species that coexisted directly alongside us during these ancient periods. When we compare populations, we see some brilliant structural differences. On one hand, you have our delicate facial architecture. On the other, we have Neanderthals, who possessed a measurably different, much more robust facial architecture. Think larger brow ridges and a really pronounced mid-face projection. Now, if evaluated purely against current mainstream beauty standards, modern observers might judge those heavier, robust features as pretty unconventional. But here is the crucial, mind-blowing point. Despite these pronounced physical differences, these two species repeatedly interbred across an extended period of direct contact. Whatever specific biological calculus was happening at the time, Homo sapiens clearly found Neanderthals to be attractive enough, or at the very least viable enough reproductive partners, to literally produce offspring on a meaningful scale. It absolutely proves that attraction is incredibly flexible and highly context-dependent. In fact, recent forensic reconstructions of Neanderthal skulls, specifically a highly publicized reconstruction of a Neanderthal woman using that same tissue depth data we talked about, prove that our popular imagination has completely distorted things. The resulting face was actually highly presentable, much more familiar and recognizably human than the cultural stereotypes suggest. It really reinforces that we've been exaggerating their unkempt, monstrous appearance way beyond what the actual underlying scientific evidence supports. Moving on to Section 3, the software, prehistoric grooming and adornment. Now that we've covered the biological hardware, let's explore this software of ancient attraction and uncover the really compelling archaeological evidence showing that prehistoric people cared enormously about their personal appearance. Instead of just living in some unkempt natural state, ancient humans basically had prehistoric skincare and grooming routines. They were actively managing their appearance with intense intention. We're talking about using red ochre pigments for body decoration tens of thousands of years before written language even existed. They invested massive amounts of time into crafting delicate beads from shell and ivory. They even used carved bone and antler combs to maintain well-groomed hair. And perhaps most strikingly, they engaged in painful, deliberate dental modifications and scarification. This wasn't just about pure survival. This was a massive investment in status, social presentation, and aesthetic appeal.
Now, we do have to pump the brakes a bit and apply some real interpretive caution so we don't project too much onto the past. Take artifacts like the famous Venus figurines, those small carved figures with the exaggerated hips and abdominants. For a long time, people just assumed these were straightforward representations of ancient beauty ideals, but they aren't necessarily prehistoric fashion magazines. Modern scholarship points out they might symbolize entirely different ritual purposes, maybe fertility, or even self-representation from a downward-looking perspective.
As we look at later written records from ancient history, we see that while the biological hardware remains the same, the cultural software shifts dramatically based on specific economic conditions. For instance, in societies with heavy outdoor manual labor, pale skin suddenly became the standard because it meant you were rich enough not to have to work out in the fields. In times of severe food scarcity, extra body fat represented wealth and security. This tells us something absolutely vital. There was never one single, fixed, universal standard for beauty. It is highly culturally constructed right on top of that biological baseline. Let's expand on this in Section 4, Beyond the Surface, the complete attraction puzzle. Because reducing this entire topic purely to static facial bone structure severely undersells how multidimensional ancient mate selection truly was. Ancient humans were constantly picking up on a complex puzzle of cues. Research shows that vocal attractiveness, like pitch and resonance, actually functions as an honest signal of hormonal health, entirely independent of the face. Even the way a person walks, their gait, reveals a ton about their health and personality traits. Add to that the attraction-relevant social credit someone would get for demonstrated hunting skills, high-level tool-making, and sheer reliability within the group. Attraction was a highly dynamic, living evaluation. And we really have to remember the brutal reality of the prehistoric environment. Just like today, there was massive individual variation within ancient populations, but periods of severe environmental hardship, nutritional stress, and parasitic infection directly influenced physical appearance, ruining skin clarity and muscle tone. So, the number of individuals actually displaying those robust biological health markers fluctuated wildly, depending on whether the tribe was experiencing a period of abundance or a period of total starvation. Because of these grueling physical realities and significantly shorter average lifespans, signs of youth and physical vigor carried immense practical weight in ancient mate selection. You literally needed a partner who could physically endure the sheer demands of prehistoric life. Though it's definitely worth noting that older individuals still provided meaningful counterbalancing value through their accumulated resources, wisdom, and established social status within the community. Let's bring this all the way to the present. Section 5. The modern connection, swiping through history. Let's see how this deep prehistoric biology connects directly to your smartphone and contemporary dating. When researchers dive into massive datasets from contemporary dating platforms, the results are honestly staggering. Across incredibly diverse modern backgrounds and cultures, humans are consistently swiping right based on those exact same core preferences: facial symmetry, proportional ratios, and honest health signals. The medium has changed to a digital screen, sure, but the evaluation criteria are practically identical to those used by our ancestors tens of thousands of years ago. As the research puts it, the underlying biological machinery has been running in essentially the same way for an extraordinarily long time. The specific hairstyles, the trendy jewelry, and the cultural packaging of what we consider fashionable will change endlessly across human history. But the underlying evolutionary engine evaluating potential mates, that has remained a quietly unbroken chain connecting every single generation of humans who ever lived. It's precisely the same. So, to wrap up this explainer, I want you to think about this incredible continuity. The very desire to be found attractive, the impulse to alter our appearance for the sake of another's gaze, it is not some modern luxury born of mirrors and social media. It is a deeply embedded part of what it is always meant to be human. It really makes you wonder, who was that ancient person who first looked at their reflection in a pool of still water, picked up some red ochre, and decided they wanted to look just a little bit better?